everyone, I'm Lynn Brum of Yield10. I'm here today with CEO Oliver Peoples and CSO Christy Snell, and today we're going to talk about Yield10 and the oilseed plant Camelina. So Ollie, starting with you, can you tell me a little bit about the founding of Yield10?
Yeah, well, that's actually an awkward question because a little bit just isn't going to quite cover it. And fundamentally, Yield10 is actually, I would say, the relaunch of a company called Metabolics has been around for 20 odd years. One of the early innovators in the what's now known as synthetic biology space. So about 5 years ago, we rebranded the company as Yield10 Bioscience to focus on crop science with the goal to really improve crop productivity and to create sustainable products to really address some of the climate change and sustainability issues that we're facing. Today, go ahead.
No, what I was going to say there is, why don't you tell me a little bit about the number of people we have today and where those folks are located?
Yeah, so when we started in 2017, there was about 22 of us. We were about equally split between offices here in Woburn, which is about 10 miles north of Austin. But we also have an oilseed center of excellence up in Saskatoon, Canada, which is pretty far up there, to be honest, and quite a journey to get to. Today, we have over 30 people. Again, I would say split roughly 50-50, so we've grown a little bit, about 32 or so people. We primarily conduct the corporate activities in Woburn, essentially dealing with the public markets. We are publicly traded, as well as, I'd say managing and overseeing essentially the day-to-day operations. But this is also where we have the discovery center, if you like. This is where we have our advanced grain modeling system, which Christy may describe. But up in Saskatoon, it's primarily focused on developing, testing, and launching new varieties of the oilseed Camelina, which we see as the foundation of the future business.
Great, Ollie. What's been the mission of Yield10 since its founding in 2017?
Yeah, well, number one, create shareholder value. But number one, do create shareholder value, but also do that by doing something really exciting and differentiating to produce new products. And so I would say the mission really is about improving food production overall. And when you look at climate change, we've got to increase food productivity by somewhere around 60%. Now, that increase in productivity is primarily around protein. We don't need more sugar in our diet. Just look around. We don't. We really need more protein in our diet. And that's going to really be necessary to meet climate change. Now, keep in mind, we've got to do that with diminishing land resources because of population growth. We've got more roads, more trains, more infrastructure. And so that obviously is going to put tremendous pressure on agriculture to continue to deliver more. Then on top of this, just the icing on the cake, if you like, is climate change, of course. Also having a pretty negative impact on crop production. Just look at the variable weather patterns, some of the challenges we had in the Pacific Northwest last year with heat waves, flooding, you name it, we're seeing it. So obviously there's a tremendous need for innovation in crop science and ag biotechnology to drive increased productivity in agriculture.
Yeah, thanks, Ollie. Christy, let's bring you into the conversation. How does the R&D team fit into the mission of Yield10?
We help enable the mission. We make the scientific discoveries that really teach us how to build better plants, how to achieve our mission. And we've really assembled an impressive set of tools that really helps us make targeted genetic changes to plants. And this has helped us develop Camelina as a platform for making PHA bioplastic directly in the seed. It has helped us build a platform for omega oils production in Camelina. And also to increase seed yield and seed oil content.
Yeah, that's great. What have been a couple of maybe the tools that Yield10 researchers have used, with respect to crops and Camelina?
Well, Ollie mentioned the grain platform. That's our gene discovery platform. And we use that to look for new traits, to look for new genes to improve plants. We also have done a lot of genome editing, and that has helped us to really engineer plants that also have an easier regulatory path.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Christy. With that mission in mind, Ollie, what's the overall business objectives for Yield10?
Well, goal number one, revenue, right? Obviously, that's what our investors are mostly focused on these days. But I think, fundamentally, I would say there's really multiple objectives here. But basically using Camelina, the oilseed, as a platform crop to produce renewable products, initially targeting basically vegetable oil as a source of feedstock for producing renewable aviation and biodiesel and renewable diesel fuels. These are going to be really critically important as we decarbonize those two transport systems.
Yep.
That's a big goal, and that's probably the near-term market pool that we're seeing most attraction on. You've got a massive number of companies investing in that area. Unlike some of the earlier attempts in biofuels, what you're seeing now is you're seeing big oil. And obviously big oil's making hay at the moment, literally, at our expense. But fundamentally, you see Exxon, Chevron, BP, Phillips 66, Total, you name it, they're all involved in it. They're all looking at increasing access to vegetable oils as a source of renewable fuels, keeping in mind that that's a natural competition with food use of oils. And
Yep.
of course, we all do like, French fries. So we need frying oil, we need cooking oil, we need oil in our diet in general. And so what that's done is it's just created this tremendous market pool for increasing the productivity of vegetable oil production globally.
Yep.
And our platform technology, Camelina, is just extremely well suited to that. So it's a very exciting time for us. It presents some real challenges as we begin to move from an R&D focus, which really has been driven by Christy, towards a commercial activity. And so we're in the middle of that transition. It's got its challenges for sure, but generally we're making great progress and talking to a lot of partners. But that's just phase one. The second phase is really to then use that same platform to produce a fully degradable bioplastic. And again, we're now in field scale up with that. And then ultimately to produce essentially a renewable, sustainable source of fish oil as a replacement for fish oil.
Yeah, Ollie, as you've described both the downstream market and Christy focused on the science and the innovation, in between there, where do the growers fit into Yield10's plans?
Yeah, well, they're pretty much front and center. Without growers, there is no business, right? So
that's for sure.
Number one. And number two, I think what we see really is partnering with growers. I mean, really providing growers with a new opportunity to grow a new crop that allows them to differentiate and de-risk some of the crops that they currently grow. It gives them a flexibility in planting time. So one of the really cool things that we've done is we've been working on what you call winter camelina. So winter camelina is a crop we're going to plant in the fall, probably September, October. It's going to come up out of the ground. It's going to sit dormant through the winter, and then it can come up fairly quickly and produce a harvest in the spring. And so in effect, it acts as what they call a cover crop. And that's really important as we think about the greenhouse gas and climate change impacts of agriculture in general, where we need to continuously replenish soil carbon content, as well as prevent nutrient runoff. And so it ties really into the system in a way that adds to food production versus detracts from it.
Right. And so, Christy, what innovations has Yield10 really achieved with Camelina over the last 5+ years?
Mm-hmm. So we've increased Camelina seed yield per acre. We've increased the amount of oil in the seed. We've produced our novel PHA bioplastic directly in the seed. We've also done some elite germplasm development where we've used some conventional breeding tools, but we've also done genome editing. And so we've done this on both winter and spring lines.
Yeah. So what do you see are the opportunities for further improving the crop?
Mm-hmm. Well, the farmer needs a robust crop that he can grow, consistently to get high yields and good agronomic properties. So to do that, you really need herbicide tolerance, you need disease resistance, you need pest resistance. So we've developed Camelina lines with herbicide tolerance. Those are in the field this year. And we've also developed lines with downy mildew resistance and are testing those in the field this year, both winter.
Yeah, so one thing I think may be worth elaborating on, Christy, is just where in its sort of, if you like, its technology maturity is Camelina compared to a modern elite crop like canola or soybean or corn.
Yes.
I mean, how far back is it? What's the upside potential?
I think there's tremendous upside potential. Camelina is really in its infancy. There has been some breeding, but there certainly hasn't been as much breeding as has been done for corn and soybean. So I think there's a lot of potential to increase its productivity, both through genetic engineering, through breeding, and really make it a robust crop.
Right. Christy, I think the team has done, now 3 or 4 years at least of field trials of spring Camelina, and you've done some extensive work, including the work underway this year in winter Camelina. Where do you think the geographies are from the data you have today, say for winter camelina and then spring?
Mhm.
Where growers might be interested in growing the crop and where today that the camelina probably has a very good shot of growing well.
Yeah, so for spring varieties, we'd say the Pacific Northwest of the U.S. and also the Canadian prairies. That would be a good area for spring camelina growth. For winter camelina, we're looking at it for a rotation crop to rotate with crops such as soybean and corn. So that would be more in the Midwest. So there can be extensive acreage for winter crops growing off season for conventional crops.
Great, thanks. And so as we've talked about growers participating in our program with camelina, Ollie, what's the downstream market for camelina oil? And you referred to the energy companies earlier in our conversation today, but what's really happening there with the market for vegetable oils as fuel?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say in the last few years, there's just been this tremendous upsurge in demand. I mean, we estimate it today based on announced investments by major players in producing these renewable aviation and renewable diesel fuels, somewhere around £6 billion of additional vegetable oil capacity required. And to meet the carbon standards, that really has to primarily be grown in North America. So it's a great opportunity for farmers. However, just to give you kind of a numbers, if you were to try to produce that all with soybean, you'd require about 60% more soybean acres. So instead of about 90, you're talking about 150 or something, 178 million acres. And those acres don't really exist.
Yeah.
And so that production is going to have to come from a number of sources. One is going to be obviously genetic traits that can improve the productivity of soybean or increase the oil content of soybean. That could be very helpful. Same thing, genetic improvements to canola, which is a major oilseed crop, primarily in Canada, but it's got twice as much oil as soybean, so it's obviously very important in oil, to improve its oil content as well. So there's some upside there, but really what it's created is this opportunity for new oilseed crops like camelina, and that's why we're so excited about where we are today. We finally are in the right place at the right time. Even although we're in Woburn, with their Centre of Excellence up in Saskatoon, we're very, very well positioned to begin to launch camelina as an additional source of vegetable oil for these markets. And we see just a tremendous opportunity to do both spring acres for that market as well as winter acres, although we're a little later in development in the winter side, but I think we're scaling that up very rapidly.
Right. Okay, Christy, can you give us a little bit of an update maybe on the winter program right now that started last fall and has been in harvesting mode in some areas since spring of this year?
Yes, so we have developed some proprietary germplasm of winter lines, and we've been testing them in the field this year. We've been scaling them up. We're growing 17 acres up in Canada of one line, and we're scaling up the other line in some acreage.
Right. And so when the seed is produced from this past winter that we're just wrapping up, that field campaign now, what's your outlook for growers participating in the winter program starting in this September? What do you think? What farmers might be a good match for this winter program?
I think farmers that are willing to try a new crop. This is a crop at its infancy, but it has a lot of potential. And we've done some research on it, and it grows very, very well. It has very good winter tolerance, cold tolerance. So I think it's a very good crop for farmers to try. It also gives them a cash crop to increase the value of their acreage. It's a cover crop. So I think overall, it's a very good crop.
Yeah, I mean, Saskatoon's a pretty cold place in wintertime. So can you talk a little bit about that line that endures the Saskatoon winters?
Yeah, so Saskatoon is very frigid, and our Camelina line survives the winter and, comes up in the spring and it's happy and starts growing. So it's very impressive.
Ollie, could you tell us a little bit about the business model of Yield10?
Yeah, so, really, we're really, given our strength and innovation and the fact that we're now beginning to get into the commercial side of it, we've developed a very rigorous approach to the business model. And that business model is really designed to be capital light. We don't see the need to try to become a biofuel company. There's lots of biofuel companies interested in buying the vegetable oil product from the camelina. So just taking the biofuel opportunity, which is nearest term anyway, as an example. I mean, the value chain looks basically like the science at Christie's side, all the way through farmers, seed processing, which is oilseed crushing to extract the oil and the protein going to feed. And then obviously some kind of biofuel conversion to make aviation biofuel or renewable diesel.
Right.
And then because of those types of fuels, it can actually just go into a pipeline and ultimately to the gas pump and into the tank of a big truck, or ultimately into an airplane, and hopefully we'll all fly off to have a nice vacation. So that's really what it is. So the way we're managing that is really through essentially owning the proprietary seed. Those are going to be proprietary to Yield10, patent protected, per plant variety act protected, or breeders' rights protected. That's our goal there. To contract production with the grower so that they basically make a good income on what they're doing for us. To take that harvested product from the grower through a seed crusher. Under contract again, and then with offtake agreements. In other words, already pre-sell that oil to some of the fuel companies again. So the whole value chain works if we can reward each step in the value chain. And obviously, right next to Yield10 is the grower. So the grower is pretty damn important in this.
Right.
And so it's really important that we build strong long-term relationships with growers to build a truly sustainable business for the long term.
Yeah, absolutely, Ollie. And if growers are interested in growing Yield10 Camelina, how should they contact us?
Well, there's a couple of different ways of doing that. One is to go to the email address, growers, growers, at yield10bio.com, or visit the grower page on our website, yield10bio.com, and you'll get the information necessary.
Great. Thanks, Ollie. And thanks, Christy, for participating in the podcast today. Coming up, we plan to host members of our team to discuss topics including the ins and outs of growing Camelina, and we'll take a deeper dive into the biofuels market. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thanks, guys.